Well, good afternoon and good evening to everybody. On behalf of SIOR Europe and our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I'd like to welcome you all to our panel discussion celebrating International Women's Day, which of course most knowledgeable, experienced and successful commercial real estate brokers and advisors in Europe. And of course, you're very welcome to join us if you're not already a member. We've assembled today for you an impressive and inspirational panel of women working in the real estate sector. And we will discuss a variety of topics, but impact in particular on women in real estate. Before I hand over to Andrea Carpenter, the moderator of today's panel, firstly, I would like to offer our thanks to our sponsors, TSL, our first European industrial partner, and also to the SIOR Foundation. Secondly, I would like to offer our support, thoughts and prayers today to our friends, colleagues and the people of Ukraine. Please do give generously to one of the charities supporting the people of Ukraine. And in particular, if you're in the UK, but have no doubt similar funding countries across Europe to support people. Introduce our moderator, Andrea Carpenter, and a writer and communications consultant in the property industry of Women Talk Real Estate, Andrea. Andrea, I'd now like to hand over to you to introduce.
Thank you so much. And as you said, we're here to celebrate some fantastic women in real estate today. You mentioned that International Women's Day is next week, but day to celebrate getting more women in, kind of really having a positive look at the ways that we can make sure they stay and just kind of really provide some good work that women do. By four amazing women. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves one by one. And Katie, may I start with you? Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Katie. I've been in the real estate and construction space for over 12 years now, having held a variety of roles at JLL, Cluttons and CBRE. At present.
Hi, I'm Nicola Mottershaw. I work for Vale Williams in the UK. I am a chartered surveyor with at least a couple of decades experience, or possibly more. I'm the lead partner at Vale Williams for advisory. So in our team, we advise occupancy.
First, it's a huge pleasure to be here with you. My name is Glenn of Operation for Franchise Partner in Accor, working in the hospitality business 30 years and work together closer and really support others.
Oh, perfect. Well, we'll talk about role models and mentoring a bit later. So that's a perfect, I'm going to come to you for that, certainly. And I think what I really like about this panel already is how many different routes that women have found to be in their part of the industry. But Nicola, I'm going to start with you. You feel like you're probably the most traditional route there as a chartered surveyor. So tell us kind of, what originally prompted you to come into the industry?
So I think credit has to go to my father. At school, I was very much pushed towards being a dietitian. And being a father of three daughters, you don't say no to daughters, do you? So he suggested I become a chartered surveyor, and then took me to visit a dietitian and a chartered surveyor. The dietitian had a half-dead spider plant and a grey filing cabinet, and the chartered surveyor seemed to have a very varied role, a nice car and a very big office. So the decision was made.
Yeah, and has that played out well? You don't have a dead spider?
No, not really. No, I'm still waiting for the very nice car.
But that's quite typical, I think, of having someone in a family who either was a chartered surveyor or knew about the industry. And I think that's probably one of the issues, isn't it? That we're kind of
I think that's one of the themes that's going to come out of today. Really, is that most people in the industry know somebody in the industry in some way, shape, or form, and it's probably where, as an industry, property itself can improve.
Yeah. And Katie, also from you, I heard lots of familiar names from the property industry. Sounds like you came in as a graduate. How did you join the industry?
Actually, I didn't. So I probably had a slightly different route to a lot of others. I'll be quite honest, I made absolutely no conscious decision to enter the industry early in my career. Yeah, if I'm totally honest, I didn't fully understand what a career in the industry looked like when I left university. I did a degree in English literature and linguistics, so not necessarily fully aligned to the world of real estate. But I think my journey stemmed more around having an open mind, being inquisitive, being in London as well was really helpful, I think, in that journey. And I think opportunities came my way and I think I just grabbed them with both arms. But equally, the real estate industry has been incredibly supportive of my journey so far. And I think consequently, I've been in it for 12 years now and haven't managed to escape as yet. So yeah, slightly different route.
Yeah, I feel like so many people say it's an accident they're in the industry. And that's the flip side of it being a secret industry, right? Who knew? Who knew it was there, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think growing up, I think I had these great visions as a 12-year-old of being a transatlantic corporate lawyer, but having zero idea what that meant. So in reality, disappointed the parents, but couldn't be happier in the journey so far.
Perfect. Well, let's go to our corporate lawyer now. Sonia, tell us about how you came into it. You're not a transatlantic one, but I think you match all the other criteria.
Yeah, I kind of made the discovery that actually this transatlantic lawyer thing really does not exist in that way, that all girls that want to study law kind of imagine myself as well. So I originally wanted to become a corporate lawyer, like a classic corporate lawyer, and was in an internship. And they kind of lent me to the real estate team. And I had the best experience there, was assigned to the biggest due diligence in Germany at that time. And once I got back to corporate, realized that this was boring in comparison to real estate. That was at the beginning of university, and it stuck with me. And I've never left the industry, so to speak.
And do you think, were you aware of the industry before you kind of got chucked into that big due diligence?
Not at all. And the experience that I made during uni was, of course, different than what I experienced being in the industry right now, because that was like a small role. So I was in touch with the topics, but not really the clients or the industry itself. It was the subject that fascinated me.
Yeah. And Gosha, finally, you're in the hospitality scene. How did you come to be there then, and then into the real estate part of that?
So I really, as a child, I was dreaming to work in the hotel, partly because that was the place when you can meet the, very famous people from TV, etc. So I decided to go to the hospitality school, which was not so easy in Poland because at that time we had just 3 hospitality schools in Poland. But finally I got there, and to be honest, I don't think that I can do anything else except the hospitality business. Of course, I had a small break 1 year. I will tell you, I was a bit tired maybe, and I opened my own company. I was making the renovations. So if you need any renovations, I can do it by myself. But then after the 1 year, I back to the hospitality business. And which is what is great in my company, that I started as a receptionist and then I was promoted through different positions. I worked in 8 or 9 hotels in 11 cities in Poland, starting from the really basic positions, then being for more than 10 years as a general manager, and finally I got a proposal to be in charge of my franchise partner. I am very happy that it's combination of my operational experience I got for the past 20 years and the new way of thinking, think like the owner. Yes, so that's combination of both.
And what point do you think you realized, okay, this is a real estate business slightly as well as an operating hospitality business, and I quite like this part of it?
Yeah, it takes a bit of time, I will tell you, to understand what is the gap. But finally, we have one goal, yes. And if the partner can see that you are there to support them, to help them with your experience, it's really helping in the cooperation, and it brings a long-term cooperation for the future.
Yeah. Okay. And Nicola, like as you kind of started that, your role in your company and things like, how do you find your place? There's lots of different departments, there's lots of different ways. How did you kind of find your place in this industry, if that's not too abstract a question?
So I think when I started in the industry, I realised I wanted quite a lot of variety. I enjoy problem solving. I like transactional work. I like understanding other people's business. I did start off working in property asset management, which I guess as graduates is a fairly good grounding position, but I realised I didn't want to stay there. And occupier advisory sort of ticked all of those boxes for me. It's a great variety because you're effectively working in different businesses depending on what the business is that you're supporting at any one time. And the variety for that is what I thrive on, and the problem solving element of generally I work with people who don't have property knowledge a lot of the time.
And do you think you were directed that way being a woman? Do you think there were certain departments that were kind of less appealing to you, or just you felt were, I don't want to do the cut and thrust of the buying and the selling, you know, I like this advisory side of things?
Yeah, I think there are certain areas that are less or were certainly less inclusive, and maybe that still stands. I know certainly, and it's purely a UK thing, that there's all sorts of assumptions, be it whether you're from the north or the south, has been pointed out to me before, my name, all sorts. But no, I feel I found the right place for me in the industry.
And how have you seen the industry change for women within your sort of part of the market?
I think it's changed in line with society in many ways. I think, you know, if you go through the generations, increasingly more and more women are working, are holding more senior positions than traditionally they would have done. I think actually the property industry's possibly moved more than a lot of other industries, albeit it's now constrained by the people that are actually available within it, if that makes sense. So to put context on that, when I was at college, there was 100 people on our course and only 10 of them were women. So logically, there is only a 10% pool of women from that sort of generation of trainees. And if you look at that to where we are now, it's changed dramatically.
Yeah, no, and Sonia, like, you're obviously a lawyer working within real estate. Do you kind of feel like you're part of the real estate industry, or part of the legal industry, or both? And what's that like?
Yeah, I think it's kind of both, because when I deal with internal things, it's of course a lawyer thing, and I have to find my position in the law firm and abide by law firm rules, of course. But probably 85% of my clients are in the real estate business. So understanding that, being part of that, meeting them at Expo Real in Munich or something like that is a huge part. So it's kind of both. And I see positive development in both parts, that there are more and more women now than compared to when I started.
Yeah, I was going to say the law as well can be quite male dominated. So you do see progression from your perspective then?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, perfect.
For me, and also for other women that I see in all kinds of positions.
Yeah. And Katie, obviously you're kind of now, you're in, you know, you've been in the traditional side thing, but you're in an emerging area, which is ESG and tech all combined. Do you think that's a different environment for women? Is that a good place to be? Do you still feel part of quite a male-dominated industry in that part?
It's interesting because I don't necessarily feel it is really male dominated, actually, in terms of my day to day. I think if you look at the stats around technology more generally, I think out of the 3 million people employed in technology in the UK, only 26% of those are women. So I think you can argue that there's obviously a gap to be addressed there. So I think some of the challenges that have been faced by real estate are being faced by the technology sector. And I think, you know, there was a report, I think, produced by Accenture at the start of this year, and they said that typically women in technology by the age of 35 tend to depart the industry because they feel it's non-inclusive. So I think, you know, some of the challenges being faced are there. And I think the other challenge for technology is the amount of school leavers and youngsters at university who think that technology is actually a route for them in terms of a career. So I think in reality, you've got this merge of not a huge talent pool coming in at the bottom, but equally you've got those sort of potential role models and inspirations actually departing at that mid-level. So there's a bit of a gap there, but I think equally there's huge recognition in technology that women bring a huge amount of advantage. And I think equally there's a huge amount of investment and commitment within the technology sector around getting in place a really strong diversity balanced sort of agenda in place, and very much providing that blueprint, I guess, for other industries that are on that sort of high growth curve.
Yeah, and can you articulate a few of those benefits that you think women bring to that tech side?
Yeah, so I think it's obviously, I think if you look at the statistics, there's the sense from the UK government that a higher proportion of women in technology would actually see a further increase in 2.6 billion into the UK's economy, which is quite a big number. And I think really it's around that diversity in thinking. I think if we look at our customer base, it's hugely diverse, and equally that requires us to be diverse in our thinking in order to meet and anticipate their requirements in its fullest and truest sense. I think above and beyond that, the diversity that you see is very much around talent attractiveness, talent retention, but equally there's a huge amount of evidence to support around that operational efficiency and innovation, and really adding that challenge in terms of practices and ways of being. But equally there's also a financial performance element, and I think there was some research conducted in the US on technology, for example, that showed that companies within sort of that top 20% in terms of diversity quartiles saw a 28% increase in financial performance. So I think there's something there to be got at, and it's definitely a no-brainer in terms of businesses to really address that and see the benefits.
Yeah. And Gosha, over in the hospitality industry, I don't know, do you feel, same thing really, do you feel part of the real estate industry? Are you getting that kind of institutional male feeling over there? I think more broadly, hospitality, I think, is more diverse, right?
Very diverse. It's very diverse, but when you will come to the high position or the highest level of the positions, it looks different. Because even if I will see in my company, 57% of our employers are men, 43 are women. But then when it become to the positions, 42% of our women are on the head of department positions, and average number of GMs in our company is 29%. So it's quite good, 29% of women on GM positions, but in Poland it's almost 50%. So the truth is that in the hospitality business we have a lot of women, but when it comes to the new position or how they are promoted, usually they are facing some troubles behind, because if you will be promoted, probably you will be offered a bigger hotel or in another city. So the problems they are facing is, okay, what should I do with my family? What should I do with my kids? And then we need to remember that it's not only the country, because we are operating in 92 countries, but sometimes even if you are in the same country, but the culture of the region is different, then you are facing another troubles. For instance, I'm living in Silesia region, and when I was promoted and I got the proposal to move 400 kilometers, just to explain, Silesia region, which is in the south of Poland, it's a very traditional region. So women never worked, they always stayed at home, they took care about the children and the family, just the husband or the father was working. So when I say to my husband and to my, especially mother-in-law, within 1 week I will move to another city, I was the lucky one having them with me and supporting me, but sometimes that's some elements which needs to be taken under consideration as well in different industries.
Yeah. And you raise a good point. I mean, we talk about gender diversity, we don't think about the different countries. Do you think, looking at real estate, if you can, from your hospitality perspective, it's, what is it like for women trying to come into that industry? Is it also heavily male dominated?
Yeah, in majority of the countries, yes. But once again, it depends of the position, because in majority of the countries, the women, they like to work in the hospitality business because they feel we are together, managing almost like home. Yes, you have your friends. Well, you welcome your friends in the hotel. You have your family. So the guests, you have to prepare the food. You have to clean. So the management style is almost like at home. So they feel maybe a bit more comfortable compared with other industries. But then the depends of the country and depends of the culture. There is a question if they can be promoted, and it's not even if they can, because they can be everyone promoted, but if they have a chance to change the position or to move somewhere, for instance.
Yeah. And Sonia, what about in Germany? What's the sort of diversity landscape looking like for women now? I mean, you're fairly hierarchical, I think, in your company structure. So it can be, you know, sometimes it's interesting to see how people move up in seniority.
Yeah, it's very different depending on which level you are, actually. Like starting with a law firm, it's almost 50-50, and then it really thins out pretty quickly with women. And I've made the observation that when I'm in the UK or in the US, it's more common than in Germany to have female partners or more senior positions, especially also women who have children and who manage that, and where it's normal. I'm not saying it's not normal in Germany, but not to that degree. So I see a difference where Germany can improve a little.
Yeah, and we sort of have to kind of really get to understand those different cultural aspects. And Nicola, kind of, I mean, just when you think about employers in the UK or wherever you work, do you think they have enough understanding of the importance of diversity and gender diversity particularly? Where are we on that conversation?
I think everybody recognises the value it brings in, and Katie's, I think, just put that into a financial context as well. But I think you come back to the point, particularly in real estate, that is almost the unknown profession. And I was chatting with some of the women in our business earlier, and I think the perception is that either you have a builder who builds buildings, or you have an estate agent who sells buildings. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of realization there's something in between, and everybody's pensions reliant on a lot of the property industry, commercial property. So I think if you want to encourage the diversity, and also recognizing that the skills shortage that I think that is a worldwide problem, you've got to get out there and sort of try and compete for the talent, I think, in schools and colleges, and look to whether a business as a property consultancy actually really needs chartered surveyors. My personal view is you could recruit from a more diverse pool of skilled people, and that would also actually benefit your business.
Yeah. And what do you think the risk of not addressing the topic is then, if companies carry on?
You don't have that resilience, do you? You can't recruit. You don't have the resilience. You're not attractive to people coming into the industry or looking to join the industry. And I actually think probably one of the areas that would be of interest, and one that you can really promote, is sustainability. At the moment, I think property can add an awful lot to reducing our carbon footprint, and I think a lot of people care is probably the best way. A lot of people want to see that they're contributing to that, and I think it could be a really good way to get certainly younger people engaged who are looking at builders and estate agents.
Or architects, that's the other one. I think they realise that the building is designed. But you're right, I've not thought about the estate agent. That everyone always asks me about house prices when I work in real estate. You have to deal with that. But Katie, I mean, you're the intersection of lots of new things that are going on. And do you think that's a way to address diversity in the industry, actually, is to kind of look out into those pools and bring different people in? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, I'm probably a good case of that. I'm not a surveyor. I have a very different background, but I think a lot of what you gain is from your experiences and the opportunities that you can do. And I genuinely believe real estate is very rich for that. I think it obviously, from a sustainability perspective, offers a huge amount of opportunity in terms of where real estate will go in the future. That's very exciting. Introduction of technology, introduction of new roles that we talked about earlier. So I think it's a really exciting space in terms of that. So I think for me, it's kind of a win-win scenario.
Yeah, but as you arrived to working in the real estate firms and others around you were chartered surveyors, did you feel different? Did you think it made a difference that there was that? I mean, that's already a helpful diversity, right?
Yeah, well, interesting. I started more in the marketing, communications, account management space. So I was sort of labeled in a support function when I started my career in the real estate sphere. And I think for me, as I've spent more time and I've grown and I've built my knowledge, there definitely is a different recognition. And I think, people probably look at you in a different way once you take on these other roles. But I think there was perhaps a stigma earlier in my career, but I think that's sort of lessened. But I think also, being at CBRE, for example, the open-mindedness of the business there in terms of other schemes and other routes of entry into surveying was a really strong focus for them.
Yeah.
And I think there was a huge amount of work around apprenticeship schemes, looking at alternative roles. How do we sort of change the model of real estate? I think, as you say, people look at it as a state agency building a bit of cement, buying some land, that there's so much more to it. And actually, what that ecosystem looks like and what the roles are within real estate are going to look really different in probably 2 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. And actually, it requires us to all sit there and think differently and challenge ourselves around what those roles need to be in the future in order for real estate to adapt and function in the way that the future will require.
Yeah, I'm hoping we've got some natural kind of evolution to diversity, but we have to work hard at it as well, I think. I might stay with you, Katie, actually. When we did the prep call, Paul asked us a question and challenged us to this question, which I think we can address now, which is, what is the main issue that hinders more female participation or progress? He called it, was there one elephant in the room, or was this a series of issues? I don't know. Did you have a think about this, Katie, and see if you could break it down?
Do you know what? I did spend a lot of time thinking about this one, if I'm honest. I think there is obviously a lot of conversations around the pay gap. I think there are always conversations around maternity setups, particularly for females. I think something that's almost a potential elephant that's coming to surface is actually the impact of the pandemic. I think for me, over recent months, I've been pretty alarmed by the statistics and the impact on the female workforce. There's a lot of information out there suggesting that, on the back of the pandemic, women are actually either stepping back in terms of their careers, or they're looking to leave the workforce completely because of the stress associated with managing domestic life as well as working life. And I think for me, that's actually something that's quite alarming. And I think there's a huge amount of data out there at the minute in terms of what that can mean longer term. And I think the UN covered the fact that could set us back in terms of gender progress by 25 years if we don't focus on it now. So I think for me, that's probably the surprise, but also potential.
I agree. I have concerns post-pandemic about women choosing to be at home or doing it for convenience, sort of thing. And if it's your choice and that's your career path, I think that's fine. But if you're doing it for convenience and because it kind of makes everything work, you might probably missing out on things, that you're still ambitious, but you've kind of held yourself back. And I think that's my concern about that, really. Yeah. Gosha, kind of same question to you. What do you think hinders female progress, within the real estate sphere of the hospitality world? Or more generally? I'm sure it's the same across a lot of industries.
Once again, I have to underline as well what Katie said before. The COVID was not the best time, especially for the hospitality business, and we lost a lot of good women who are really experts because they just choose another properties or they choose another job type. And today, to be honest, generally, I think there is a huge possibility to be a part of the hospitality business for the women and to support each other. That's for me the most important thing, because I don't know how it is in other countries. I would hear it with the pleasure, but in our culture, we always thought that as a woman, we are not experienced enough. We do not have enough knowledge. And even if someone is pushing you, yes, you are good enough, you can be promoted, you can take other opportunity, just take it. We're saying, no, I'm fine here. Even if I'm thinking, maybe I can take this opportunity, maybe I can this, but there is something behind which is telling me, no, you are not good enough. You should stop here and think about. So then you need strong women, especially, or strong partner. It can be a man who will tell you, no, it's at your time, you need to go, and I will support you. And this just the sentence, I will support you, it's very important, because you can feel that, okay, even if I will make mistake, because this is what we are afraid of, that if what will happen if I will make even small mistake, I will be punished because I'm a woman. So you need someone who will tell you, okay, go. If you will make the mistake, nothing will happen. I'm here for you.
Yeah, say yes and worry about how you're going to do it later. I think that's great. And I think you're right. There is a sort of an internal break slightly in women, you know, that kind of holds them back sometimes. But Nicola, sometimes I wonder if that's because of existing in a sort of an institutionally male culture as well. I think, you know, we're all kind of attuned to the way it works, and we feel slightly that we're kind of knocking barriers each day. We've unconscious barriers that we don't notice, that imposter syndrome that Gosha talked about kind of comes to the fore. Do you think there's a cultural reason that happens?
No, I don't think it's necessarily cultural. And I think the pandemic is probably, it flips two ways, doesn't it? I think the pandemic has been brilliant in showing that people can work flexibly and from home and things like that, and deliver as much value as they would sitting at an office. So I think there's an awful lot of sort of urban myths being broken down, because I do think there is there's a perception that if you're in the office at 8:30 in the morning, you're therefore more committed to that office than if you turn up at 9:30 in the morning after you've dropped off your children. But I also take the point, I think when the pressure comes, if there's a domestic pressure and something has to give, it's quite often that it's women who'll take the career break to say, this is the point it's got to give, and I'll be the one that sort of looks after the home and domestic life, and I'll come back into the industry later. And I think there is a natural, women do naturally sort of undervalue themselves rather than overvalue themselves as a personality, almost personality trait.
Yes, it's a common.
Yeah, it's a common theme.
Yeah, I think so. And it's such a good question, Sonia. I'm going to ask it to you as well. Do you think there's one thing that stops women progressing in real estate, or do you think it's a collection of issues?
I kind of think it's a collection, and a lot of them have been mentioned. And one thing that I really see from kind of two perspectives is this imposter syndrome that has been named before. It's that women who don't get supported enough always sit back and wait for them to be found because they are good. Sometimes this happens, but not often enough. But then also for the other side to know that actually this is the natural habitat in a way for women, so that they are not being shy or not wanting the same career path, but that this is kind of normal. So I think if both parties, so to say, can walk a little closer to understanding each other, that will kind of bridge a gap and could bring both parties closer to the table.
Yeah, I love that idea that it should be our natural habitat. I'm not sure we ever think it's our natural habitat, but it's a really nice phrase. And Gosha, this year, International Women's Day theme is Break the Bias. And I think one of the important things that they talk about there is the importance of mentoring to kind of role model and things like that. And you mentioned you had a great role model in your career. Tell us how that helped you, and why is that important for women?
When I was promoted first time, I was the lucky one to have the GM who was a woman as well, and she just recognized that I'm ready. Even if I told her no, it's not my time. She said, no, you are ready. But I have to tell you that at the same time, I felt secure because she gave me the chance to go through different trainings to make my knowledge and my skills stronger, that I will feel much comfortable in it. And I see that because sometimes we are using the mentoring naming as a huge group of the trainings that we need to, maybe there is a perception that we need to spend a lot of money on it, etc. And it's not that. It's that one woman and the second, or just one person and the second, will say, okay, this is what I can teach you. This is what are my skills and what I can share with you. But probably there is something you can teach me, especially if you have different, the people on different age. There is always something we can teach each other. So I had this opportunity to have someone, but then within last few years, really in Accor, we built a strong mentoring program. Means every year before the pandemic, we had a group of people who were, as the voluntary, they were the mentors like me, and there were young ladies who, or men as well, because we are talking about different positions, who were looking what else they can know, what kind of skills they should improve, because it's great to say, okay, if you want to be on this position, this is what you need to know, but how? I'm not sure if my skills are already on proper level or there is something behind. Knowledge is one thing, but behaviors and experience and your self-assessment and self-confidence is as much important as your knowledge. And sometimes the mentoring is not to teach others some basic elements or to share the standard knowledge. It's more how you can deal with your feelings, how you can deal with your family, how I did it. Yes, maybe it will not be working in every single family, but I can just share the experience as well, what kind of blocking points I found on my line or my travel.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's great what you say. It's about behaviors sometimes, isn't it? It's learning through how others did that. I just want to make sure that participants, who are watching today know that they can kind of put questions in the Q&A as you go along. So do let us know. Katie, have you had the benefit of mentoring or been mentored or mentored people?
Yeah, so a bit of all of that. So yeah, I think for me, mentoring has been like really essential to the career journey that I've been on. Interestingly, the two mentors I have are male. Maybe that's reflective of real estate and the fact that they're more senior, but they have been amazing in terms of supporting me, being a sounding board, but also for us to have two-way feedback. So they're also very interested from my perspective, my experiences, and also been hugely influential in supporting me, in pushing me into forums that I wouldn't normally put myself in. I'd shy away, I'd step back, I'd be like, oh no, I'm not going to that panel or whatever it might have been like a few years ago, whereas they've been hugely influential in that. I think two other routes of support that are similar to mentorship that I found really helpful in my career are actually finding business sponsors. So I think in my career, I've really enjoyed being able to find sponsors in the business who allow me to work on projects that are potentially outside of my day-to-day. And I think that's been really helpful in terms of getting a subtle recognition across the wider business that you're within, as well as getting exposure to new skills. And I think the other element as I've progressed is around allies. I kind of see it as a personal board, but these people are really good as long as it's diverse in terms of giving you support, championing you, and really sort of testing you around your thought processes. So yeah, I think for me it's been really good. And I also mentor two individuals in the real estate space as well. And from my perspective, I really enjoy obviously supporting them, but I also get so much from mentoring them and learning about their experiences and equally their drive and their hunger in terms of seeing change in the industry.
And do you think they have different experiences than you did? Do you, or is it, is it evolving? Are they now have different problems or different issues than you may have done as yourself as a mentee?
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well, because one of them sort of started their career in the pandemic, which is a really interesting space to be in. And actually I started at Deepkey in the pandemic. So actually we've been able to share experiences of remote onboarding and those kinds of things, which has been amazing. I think, as it's been reflected on earlier, the generations that come through are certainly more ambitious in terms of their expectations from the workplace. So I think for them, gender balance is standard. There are other issues that then extend beyond that in their minds. So I don't think they necessarily see the things that perhaps we've seen in the early parts of our career. They definitely don't feel that they need to work doubly hard, for example, for recognition. It's hard work in their minds. So I think it's really interesting to see that come through. And I think it forces the continuation of the change and the reflection of organizations from the bottom up, and equally feeds into that talent attractiveness and retention piece.
Yeah. And Sonia, is it common in the legal sector to have a mentor within your kind of organization as well? Is that common?
In a way, yes. Maybe not in this official being assigned to, but finding a person you click with who gives you insights and support, or that you can reveal things where you think you need support on. That happened to me in several ways, and that was really, really helpful for me. So, and the same is when you're at a certain stage in your career, is giving back to youngers. Also maybe not in the very special organized mentoring way, but supporting them and giving advice or
I think women are very good at looking out for each other. They spot themselves almost doing something again, and next generation down.
Absolutely. Which is a great value that women bring to any industry and to any team. But I've been lucky enough to even is not the right word, but to also have men to look out for me and help me. But this more happened when I asked for it a little bit. Can you give me some of your insights? And that was a deal breaker in a way that I didn't see in my early career.
Yeah. And are you also seeing change in terms of flexibility and cultural change around, you know, things that we often talk about for women, which is maternity leave, but really it's about parental leave, encouraging men to do that as well. How's that changing in Germany?
It is changing in the way that for several years now, also a lot of men take mostly small percentages of parental leave, but that it's been accepted. So I don't hear anyone shouting on the floor something like, why is this guy again on parental leave, which in another circumstance I heard 5 years back. So this is changing. And so, for example, I returned from maternity leave not that long ago, and I've not experienced any gaps or any hurdles from that until now.
No, that's very good to hear. Yeah. Yeah. And Nicola, what do you think about that kind of flexibility that we need? I mean, it benefits everyone, right? It really needs to be looked at a cultural shift rather than a gender female shift.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think technology has given us the ability to have all of that flexibility. It's just getting our own mindsets to make it work better for us. And I think there's all sorts of things to give that flexibility that need to change as well. And I can only speak from a UK perspective, but I think there needs to be a sort of almost a society change as well, to a certain extent, of what people expect people to do to provide that flexibility. I think the support structures need to be sort of more robust. And I also think you probably need to change the employment law, the way employment law works, because I think what holds people back sometimes is if they've got other commitments, they don't want to feel they're over-committing to working and then that they're going to fail. And I don't actually think the way our employment law works, it actually lends itself very well to giving people that flexibility and breathing space at the times they need it.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, more flexibility within that as well. Okay, we're going to look forward now. We've got 10 more minutes. We need more women in the industry. How are we going to encourage that? Sonia, maybe I'll start with you. What would you say to someone, to your former self, I suppose, about coming into the law, into real estate? What would be your advice?
I think the most important thing is to find what you're really passionate about, and then don't doubt anything about it, because it might not be a female-dominated area. So just go for it, seek the support, and don't get yourself held back by anything, by potentially at some point wanting a family, or go for it, I would say.
So be resilient about what you want and make sure you go forward. Katie, what would be your view on that? What would you tell your younger self, or even tell, what you tell your mentors about, stick with this industry, it's good fun?
Yeah, I mean, obviously hugely biased to real estate, but I think in terms of sort of a general bit of feedback that I probably would have given to myself a good few years ago is more around speaking up and listening to your gut. I think there isn't a need to try and put a lid on something that doesn't feel right. Whether it's related to you, whether it's related to others, I think it's really important to know that you have a voice, you have a view, and it really does matter. And I think that is something that the real estate industry is working hard to recognize hugely. And I think equally there's a responsibility on us to jump in and do that too. So I think that's probably a big one. The other one as well is celebrating achievements, right? I think personally, I will avoid spotlights and celebrating anything. And I think actually it deserves airtime. And it's really important that we do that for ourselves and obviously do it for others as well.
Yeah. And that's great. Yes, celebrating achievements is really good. Again, we just kind of move to the next thing, don't we? We should kind of stop and think sometimes. And Gosha, I mean, you're in a part of the industry that's had a couple of difficult years, but like a really exciting part. What would you say to someone coming in, you know, fast track to the real estate department?
First, I would say that hospitality is a great place to be. Really, every single day is different. You can build a lot of friendships. You can meet a lot of interesting people on your in your life. But I would say that the first, what I would say, it would be, you know, you have a right to dream. You have a right to build your career. You have a right to ask if you don't know some answers. There is nothing wrong behind, and everyone has the same rights. So I think this is valid for every single industry. Doesn't matter if we are talking about the legal department or the marketing department or hospitality department. Just try to find the best place you feel comfortable as a person.
Perfect. And Nicola, what would be your advice to women coming into the industry? What would you tell your younger self? Dad was right.
Yeah, given that it's such a diverse industry, find what you enjoy about it, work with that, don't undervalue yourself, and keep your own counsel to a certain extent. If you think something's wrong, or nobody has a perfect career, and you will go through bumpy patches, but put it in perspective, talk to people, and work your way through it. Don't sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater, if that's the right expression. I think when you've done that, it's very difficult for you to come back from that.
Yeah. And Nicola, what would you do? What would you say the biggest thing is that the industry needs to do to attract more women?
I think that's split into two. I think there's the first point of making sure you attract talent and we move forward from being a builder or an estate agent or an architect. I think there's a whole piece there of attracting talent into the industry in terms of keeping women in the industry. And I think there is taking obviously the point that Paul had made, there is obviously a leaky pipe somewhere along the line that women are leaving the industry is what made them leave. And I don't necessarily think it's always anything to do with the industry itself. I think it's more of a society change that needs to happen. And the things I said before really is it's society, it's making sure the support networks are on rigid support networks. So by way of example, we all enjoy the diversity and the travel. If you've got 3 children at school, that is going to be all of a sudden what you loved before is going to become the noose around your neck going forward if you're not careful. Yeah. And to the industry, if they recognise those challenges, work with them. Everybody's got some value. It might be a different way of working for that person and the way you've worked with them, but you can't afford to lose that value and knowledge.
Yeah. And Katie, I think what's changed in the industry, I feel like the women in the industry are very purposeful. They like to go and do purposeful things, and you're doing that with your ESG work there. So do you think that's something we can use to attract more women, that actually we're at a turning point here, and more social impact, more ESG, lots of really purposeful things going on? Is that like a good marketing tool to get women into the industry?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think it's also fair to say that there's a lot of males in the industry as well. So I think, it's important not to push the bias the other way, I guess, or the stereotyping, right? And that's really important. And I think yeah, I think these types of roles are naturally roles that we enjoy. I think as females, you know, we're carers. You know, the domestic chores that we naturally do usually do reflect on the fact that we naturally lean into that part. But I think within itself, it's also reflective of the fact that the industry is evolving, and, you know, we're very progressive, thoughtful in our thinking. And I think it lends itself really towards that and a different kind of thinking that we need to adopt moving forward, which certainly is achieved through diversity, but diversity as well in its fullest sense.
Yeah. And how will you be celebrating International Women's Day next week?
Good question. As you said earlier, International Women's Day is every day. But I'm actually attending another webinar, but I think for me, it's probably just spending some time reflecting on successes. I think I'm always really keen to, for me, progress in terms of gender balance is actually taking some time to reflect on my own behaviors and how I work, and asking my team to reflect on that with me, and making sure that I'm also challenging myself with any elements that perhaps I naturally do that I shouldn't. So I think we're all guilty of it somewhere. So I think that's probably a good thing for me to do.
I think that's some good advice. And Gosha, how are you going to celebrate International Women's Day?
To be honest, probably I will be on the way somewhere, because as I'm traveling every single day somewhere. To be honest, usually I'm calling to my friends, women's as well, and telling, okay, guys, today is our day, means the day of strong women. Let's find the idea how to support others. So we are looking for the different occasion, how to help, maybe to find someone who needs a support, maybe to find someone who needs a mentor. But I think everyone, they have their own idea how to spend this day. But it's important just to underline and to know that there is a lot of good people who want to support others, and just find such a person, and you will be really in good hands.
Okay, so seek another woman out for International Women's Day. Sonia, what about you?
I'm totally fascinated by both ideas that I've heard now, and I have not put too much thought into it because we have always celebration at the office, so I'm naturally celebrating it here. But I think I will take both things that Katie and Malgosia said to also try and do that, because I really like the idea, and it should never stop to support women or to celebrate them. Perfect. And ourselves.
Yes, no, absolutely. And Nicola, finally, what are you going to be doing? Any more advice to add for us from International Women's Day?
I don't think I have, no. I think we're probably there, aren't we?
Yeah, we're there. Perfect. Well, that's been amazing. Thank you so much to Katie, Sonia, Nicola and Gosha. A brilliant and inspiring conversation. I think there's lots to take away there. I'm now going to hand over to Renata, who's going to give us a few final words. Renata, how are you tonight?
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, ladies, for so much insight. I think it was very inspirational to see and listen to the experiences and stories of female leaders. Although it's uplifting to see more women in business and leadership positions, there's still room for improvement and change. And this is what SIOR and the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is striving for. We need this platform, I believe, to encourage young women to join the sector and be led by example, showing what we can achieve, and that diversity is an asset which adds value to companies, to real estate, and to the society. And I would say that especially these days, which are shadowed by the war in Ukraine, we must strive for solidarity, unity and support for women who are fleeing from war territory, leaving their significant others and husbands, sons with no certainty of seeing them again. So we must take action, protect, donate, support in any way we can, aim for peaceful solutions which are so much needed in these turbulent days. So it may be the idea for celebrating the International Women's Day. I would like to thank you to Paul Danks, President of SIOR, for engagement in promoting D&I initiatives among the SIR community. I would like to thank to Matthew Delacroix, SIR Marketing Committee and Holistic team for promoting the workshop, and Joanna Kowalewska from Aximo team for setting up this panel. All panelists, thank you again, and all attendees as well. Please follow SIOR Europe social media platforms to know more about future events, and good evening.